Hello, everybody, and I wanted to take a bit of time to talk about the seventh studio album of New Zealand technical death metal, progressive death metal band Ulcerate, with their seventh studio album Cutting the Throat of God, which, right off the bat, that is an intense title for an album, but you can't really expect anything less than from, a death metal band of it. Makes sense, which fits with everything else that they've had for album-wise of it. Pretty badass title in general of that. I was not too familiar with this band until I had heard this album. Death metal is not necessarily my forte in music, but I will give it a try, and all that stuff a bit. And I'm here to give you my kind of thoughts on it. Just from the track list of it, I wasn't too familiar with what I guess progressive death metal is. This technical death metal in the sense of it. I was aware of what like death metal was of it, obviously, and it was a very interesting kind of experience for us. This album has 7 tracks on it. All the songs are, I believe, at least 7 minutes of it, and it was all interesting. Start off with you had the first song, "To Flow Through Ashen Hearts." This has the cinematic like opening with all the everything you need in it of ups and downs. Has these slower, darker sections that creep up on you. These fast and destructive sections with heavy use of percussion that I'm a big fan of. And the vocals on it are just pained and guttural, which you'll hear me use that word a lot throughout this album, which is, it's also just kind of everything you want in like a death metal song. He does kind of keep the same vocals throughout the album, which, at least to me, I kind of get that's what death metal is. That's what they go for, but sometimes I do kind of want a little more. But there's at least a little bit of variation on it throughout the album that I'll kind of go to. But good first song on here. Then you had "The Dawn Is Hollow," which continues this like guttural vocals, and it just kind of feels like the singer's like breath is being taken as these like quick and explosive melodies are played from the drums and lead and rhythm guitars. It's very fast paced. It's just like very like I feel like after this song, there's definitely like breathing heavy from it. It's just a very intense. Then you had Further Opening the Wounds, and it's the first time on this album I think the mixing kind of hurt the album as the loudness of it, which, yes, don't try and tell me that it's supposed to be loud and that. I'm aware of that. But sometimes on this song, on least song in this album, the mixing on it kind of makes parts that aren't really that loud really loud, and then they don't compensate with the vocals to make it so the vocals get drowned out. The vocals supposed to be intense guttural moments, and they just kind of don't do anything with it, and that's kind of an issue. It just kind of makes them like, I don't know why they're there, because like I'm like, oh yeah, there's guttural vocals going on there. I really should not be saying, oh, I should not have to realize that there's vocals going on, but maybe that's just me with that. And then you had Transfiguration, In and Out of Worlds, which is my favorite song on the album. It kind of starts off quieter, as quiet as like a death metal song can be. It just has this loud percussion that just hits at a point to kind of just like bring it back in for a second, like, oh shit, this is going on, which I was a fan of. And then it just explodes. And it keeps like the same tempo of it with these like keys going on, and it keeps drawing out these wilder emotions and gives this like transformative piece that really shows the progressive death metal is like kind of what it is. I was a big fan of it. I feel like that's the song I would recommend listening to from the album, was my favorite on it. And then To See Death Just Once, and it just immediately we get this like explosive vocal ad lib of like these like kind of screeching, these just like noises from it that was fascinating. These fast, but they're kind of more lurking in the background are these like drums that play out through it, and the vocals and other instruments kind of play in the foreground of it, which I thought was pretty good. And at certain points, it does seem to kind of draw out a little too far, like certain parts kind of get drawn past what they're technically doing, so it makes it, I kind of lose interest a little bit in it, but that's just me. And then we just had the next track, Undying as an Apparition. And it's kind of similar issues I had with like the last track. It does kind of get repetitive and it does lose you a bit, which, I don't really like saying for it, but it does kind of do it a bit. and I think this one is probably the weakest song on the album of it. It's still a very strong song, and I don't think it's bad necessarily, but it's just kind of the weakest on here, and obviously there has to be a weakest song. And then you had the title track, which is also the final song, Cutting the Throat of God. The final track of the album, it delivers on speed. Just these ominous vocals, as once again going up and down, loud percussive assault, and explosive, almost like hurt, injured vocals. And this dude, because he already sings low and guttural, but he's also like belting it. He goes lower. His register keeps going lower. Like, his voice is on the floor right now. It's intense. It's impressive how low. And it feels like witnessing a death of this whatever god, of he's cutting the throat of God. God's throat is being cut as this is the last screech of it, is what it feels like. But overall, I did enjoy this album. It took me a bit out of my comfort zone, which, I'm always a fan of in music of it. You need that in music, I feel like, at some point to kind of, find further enjoyment in music of it, to expand the horizons of it. And I think that this album does do that at points. I do think that they do have a bit of a reliance on these repetitive, like, melodies, harmonies, instrumentation. It is kind of one track throughout the album. I will say that there is small variations in it, but it is a bit repetitive at points. But what they do on this album is pretty good. I overall liked it. As far as my general thoughts on it, I enjoyed it. I'm feeling a 7 on this album. I thought it was pretty good of it. Let me know what you thought of it. That's really my thoughts on the album. Bye.